This is the presentation of characterization of river sediments in Loja, Ecuador. Problem: most heavy metal, regardless of the origin, can be transferred from water to sediments by biological action or enter the water of inorganic salts and sulfides. Already in the water, they can be transformed into organic by anthropomorphic action, and in this way pass to the higher nutritional level, being consumed by plankton that is consumed by fish, in turn by birds. The fraction that has not been dissolved can evaporate or become used as irrigation water, which is absorbed by roots of a same plant. After that, it can cause irreversible damage to the health of soils and people. To remedy the effects of this metal, their origin must be known, which can be anthropogenic. For example, the result of the expression of metals or part of component used in fungicide. In turn, they can be of origins present in rock and transported by various agents. Justification. To remedy the effects of this metal, their origin must be known, which can be anthropogenic. For example, the result of the extraction of the metal or part of component used in fungicides. In terms, they can be of natural origins, present in rocks and transported by various agents. The anomalies must be correlated with geology, metallic science, and hydrographic basins to define possible natural sources of this element. It's important to set environmental baselines for future projects in the sector. This kind of study is an important tool for monitoring water quality and heavy metals mobility. Main goal: to interpret the geochemical data from the fluvial sediment samples collected in the area covered by a Loja Norte topographic site. Specific goals: to determine the potentially toxic concentrations, to determine the background and geochemical threshold, to compare the result with national and international environmental regulation, to determine the possibility natural sources of the elements by correlating the anomalies with the microbasins and mineral occurrence. Abstract. Objective: to the limited area with high concentration of pollutants element with imply a risk for ecosystem, the health of inhabitants. Statistical analysis, especially the method of ordinary clearing and Peltier, is applied to sort the data in populations according to their concentration. Comparison. The information was compared with two laws and international regulation. Environmental Canada. Spatial distribution. Concentration maps for each element where the potential village exposed to the anomalies are displayed. Geology correlation. Pluvium and zinc anomalies are related to the intrusion of San Lucas granodiorites, where cupron and mercury with a local mineralization sulfides, and maybe with domestic and industrial discharge. Conclusions. Cautions should be taken to safeguard the health of people and agriculture because it's evidence of elements such as and mercury bioaccumulating species that are part of the food chain. location. This is the location of the map of the Loja Norte, map of the samples location. The total of samples collected in the fields are considered for a start. They were 224. The analysis of the river sediments was carried out in laboratory for 35 elements. Were initially considered for their respective geostatical analysis and interpretations. Nevertheless, cadmium was removed from the study because its concentrations were lower than the limit measurements. The total samples collected in the field and considered for the study were 224. The samples were distributed to the entire Loja Norte topographics. Samples were taken from 20 to 50 meter strength from the confluence of each drain avoid contamination by flood zones. Additionally, samples were taken at the low energy zones of river accumulated. Normally testing a distribution of regard to the mean, median, and modulus. Have the samples of similar values. With regard to the coefficient of variation and with regard to the statistical bias. With the proper transformation of the data is performed, it is necessary to recalculate the statistical parameters and normalities. This is the results of the normally test. This is the normally test trait data. This is the trends of the analysis of the different materials or elements. Theoretical semi-variogram. The nugget FS represent a punctual discontinuity of the semi-variogram at the origin. It's made due to the measurements error in the variable of its scale. Plateau is the upper bound of the semi-variogram. It can also be defined at the limit of the semi-variogram when the distance it approach infinity. Range is correspond to the distance from which the semi-variogram width become constant. This is the theoretical semi-variogram for each element, the King-Green validation, Lepeltier validation. This is the distribution of mercury in the different maps. This is the distribution of the arsenic in the different maps of Loja. This is the distribution of copper for the different map of Loja. This is the distribution of lead or plummeting for the different areas of Loja, and this is the distribution of tin for the map of Loja. This is the geological correlation, and this is the other map for the affected areas. The affected areas was the Zamora River by arsenic, the Masaca, Chirimoyayo, Huacamba, Quilotoa, San Juan, Carigán, and Tanizawa by lead. Los Guavos, for zinc, Masaca, Chirimoyo, Huasacamba, Manzana for copper, and crystal for mercury. Conclusions. Three typologies of lithology predominant in the study area. Metamorphic for this area, sedimentary for this area, and intrusive for this area. The lack of background values in the microbasins that drain through areas with mineral anomalies prevents to have a geological metallogeny, based adjusted to reality. To solve this constraint, the application of Lepeltier method to determine the concentration of a metallic element and its potential on the ecosystem is viable. The rural towns that are affected by the high concentration of copper are Masaka, Chirimorayo, Wasakuma, and Manzana. In the area under the study, there is no formal metallic mining activity now. So the anomalous concentration of the metallic element are characteristic of lithology. As a result, remediation programs are not required, but nearby to the Loja city, it's advisable to make a holistic and environmental assessment to estimate the health of the environment. These resource walls can also be used as environmental baseline for future mining project in the sector. It's important that a specific national regulation for fluvial sediments will be formalized, since previous studies were compared with Tullar's regulation only applicable to soil on water. Thank you for hearing to me.